What if the one you're destined to love is the one you're fated to destroy? In a world where alpha bonds are sacred and rejection is a curse worse than death, a single choice shattered a soul and awakened something ancient. Elira was cast aside by the only one her spirit called to, but when she returned, marked by another alpha, the one who rejected her didn't just regret it. He declared war. This is not just a story of wolves and war. It's a story of a girl who was told she wasn't enough, and how the fire inside her became prophecy. It's a story of brothers divided, of blood soaked into moonlit soil, and of a love too violent to survive, yet too deep to forget. If you're ready to feel every heartbeat, every betrayal, every impossible kiss, hit subscribe and let the story begin. The scent hit him like a blade. Wild heather, rain-drenched stone, and something ancient that didn't belong to him. Kael froze at the border of the forest, the night wind curling around his armor like a ghost's whisper. She was back. Elira. The girl he had once rejected stood tall before his wolves, her neck exposed, and branded with the mark of another alpha. Not just any alpha, one he couldn't identify, one whose power clawed at the edge of Kael's mind. Elira's return wasn't supposed to matter. He had made his choice 3 years ago. He had silenced the bond, burned the ritual robes, turned his back on fate. But now, as she stepped into the moonlight, every fiber of his being screamed. The mark glowed silver against her skin, and Kael's wolves shifted nervously behind him, sensing his fury. The bond was severed, but the ache still lived. It shouldn't hurt, she told herself, her jaw tight, her eyes calm. He broke the tie. I owe him nothing. But inside, everything pulsed. Pain, defiance, and something crueler. Longing. Kael stepped forward. The others parted, sensing the storm rising. His golden eyes locked on hers, but not with lust or hatred, with betrayal. Who marked you? He asked, voice sharp as a blade unsheathed. Not a demand, a challenge, an accusation wrapped in heartbreak. Someone who didn't throw me away, Elira said, steady as stone. The crowd gasped. Kael's aura flared, the earth cracking beneath his boots. The wind swirled with magic, heavy with unspoken history. The ritual temple had smelled of roses and firewood. Elira remembered the day her heart was broken like it had happened yesterday. She was 17, kneeling before Kael under the blood moon, her hands trembling as the spirit link shimmered between them. All she wanted was to belong. To him, to the pack, to something sacred. But Kael had stared at her like a war he couldn't win. And then, he had broken the bond before it sealed. You don't understand, he had whispered, his voice the sound of thunder waiting to fall. If I love you, I will destroy you. He turned away, and in that moment, something inside her shattered so cleanly, she didn't feel it until days later. She ran. Into the cursed mountains, into exile, into the arms of silence. But fate has a cruel way of circling back. And now, with a mark that pulsed with foreign magic on her neck, she stood once more in the land that rejected her. Kael watched her with eyes he hadn't let soften in years. The years had hardened him. Scars across his chest, titles added to his name, wolves who followed his every command. But none of that helped him breathe as he faced the girl he had cast aside. The mark on her skin made his blood boil, not with jealousy, but with fear. Who was powerful enough to bind her? And why did the bond still echo in him? I let her go. I did the right thing, he told himself. Didn't I? But the voice inside him answered with silence, and that silence roared louder than guilt. From the shadows, the council watched. Whispers stirred, about ancient prophecies, about alpha lines long thought extinct. Elira's mark didn't match any known clan. It shimmered with something older than blood. The elders warned Kael, if another alpha was rising, this wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about power, territory, war. The scout collapsed at the gates just before dawn, blood soaking his furs, claws shredded to the bone. His eyes were wide with something deeper than fear, recognition. He's not from any known bloodline, he whispered, gasping. He walks between shadows. I saw his eyes. Silver, not gold, not like ours. The elders exchanged glances. Silver eyes belong to a myth, a bloodline erased by fire a century ago. The ghost alphas. But they were supposed to be extinct. Elira heard the whispers and felt the shift in the air, as if the forest itself held its breath. That name, it stirred something inside her. A dream. No, a memory. Moonlight on black stone. The scent of snow and iron. A voice that called her name like it had always known it. She'd buried it for years. But now, it returned in fragments. He saved me, didn't he? She had been running from heartbreak when the cold took her, and something, had found her. I don't even know his name, she murmured, standing beneath the moon. But his mark won't let me forget. The mark pulsed then, warm against her skin, and somewhere deep in the woods, a howl answered. Kael watched her from the shadows, his control slipping with every heartbeat. It was more than jealousy now. The mark on her wasn't just a bond. It was a challenge. Whoever dared to claim her had defied tradition, the council, and Kael's own claim. And yet, worse than the rage was the doubt. Why didn't I mark her when I had the chance? His wolf paced inside him, restless, hungry. It didn't want war, it wanted her. The council urged Kael to prepare. If a ghost alpha was alive, he had no allegiance, no code. That kind of power could upend centuries of order. Kael's second-in-command, Malric, warned him. You've already made this personal. If you go after her now, it becomes a blood feud. Kael nodded once. The choice had already been made the moment he smelled her again. He would find this alpha and kill him. Elira rode alone at dawn, following a trail that only she could feel. Not with her eyes, but with her pulse. The mark tugged like a second heartbeat, pulling her toward the forbidden ridge where the first alphas were buried. The mist thickened with every step, curling around her like fingers. As she climbed, pieces returned, cold arms catching her before she fell, a voice whispering in her mind, "You don't have to be broken anymore." She reached the black altar just before nightfall. The wind spoke in tongues. Her knees touched snow, and suddenly, she remembered it all. She had been dying, her blood freezing. And then, he came. Not as a man, but as a wolf of silver and shadow, eyes glowing like molten steel. He didn't speak. He simply marked her, with power, not possession. The mark wasn't to claim her. It was to save her. "You gave me life," she whispered to the wind, tears frozen on her cheeks. "But you never gave me your name." Meanwhile, Kael stalked through the lower woods, following her scent, each step slower than the last. The closer he got to the mountain, the more his wolf resisted. Fear? No. Reverence. Something ancient lived up there. Something stronger than him. But Kael refused to turn back. "She's mine," he told himself, "even if I threw her away." At the summit, Elira saw a shadow emerge from the stone. Not a man. Not a beast. Something in between. The one who marked her stood silent, watching. His name came back to her like lightning in her blood. Kael, the forgotten brother. The exiled son. The true heir of the ghost alphas. Kael reached the altar at dawn. The air was bitter and still, the scent of Elira thick like smoke in his lungs. But what stopped him cold wasn't her. It was him. Kael, the brother he thought he buried. The brother whose blood had once mingled with his in a vow of loyalty. And now that brother stood protectively in front of the girl Kael had cast aside, his mark glowing on her throat like a brand of war. "You're alive," Kael growled. "And you're still a coward," Kael answered, calm as snow. Elira stepped between them, voice shaking. "Enough. I'm not a prize. I'm not a territory." But Kael wasn't listening anymore. All he could see was Kalem's hand on her shoulder. The betrayal cut deeper than he expected. Not because Kael marked her, but because Elira didn't resist. She trusted him, chose him. She was mine, Kael thought. And you took her. But even that felt like a lie now. Had she ever truly been his? Caleb revealed the truth. He had been exiled not for treason, but for saving Elira from a forced union the council demanded. He broke the order, took her into the mountains, and used the last of his ancestral power to preserve her life. You rejected her because you were afraid, Caleb said. I marked her because I wasn't. Elira stood silent as the storm raged between them. She loved one. She owed her life to the other. And now, the bond between all three of them twisted like fire. She awoke in darkness, inside a cave pulsing with blue light that danced across the stone like veins of magic. Her body ached, the mark searing with heat, her veins humming with something too ancient to name. Caleb knelt beside her, his hands steady, his eyes unreadable. It's begun, he said, voice like the tide, calm, unstoppable. The bond has reached its second phase. She tried to speak, but pain laced her throat. Her blood was changing. Outside, the wolves were restless. Across the region, unmated alphas howled into the wind, their instincts drawn toward something primal. Elira wasn't just marked, she was triggering a call, one only made by a moonborn, a mythical lineage believed to have been eradicated generations ago. The prophecy was awakening through her, and in its pages it said, when one is marked by blood and shadow, the war of the three will begin. What is happening to me? She whispered, clutching her chest. You are becoming what they feared, Caleb answered. A bridge, a queen without a crown. Kael, days away, felt the surge ripple through the bond he thought was broken. For a moment, his wolf stilled in reverence and dread. His council had begun preparations for war, sensing the rise of an ancient power. She's not just bonded, one elder said. She's becoming the center. Kael clenched his jaw. Then I need to reach her before the world does. He had failed her once. He would not do it again. But Elira wasn't waiting. As the ritual completed inside her, visions struck, of forests burning, wolves turning on each other, and two brothers locked in blood-soaked combat beneath a red moon. She was always meant to break the system, or be broken by it. Tears slid down her face as her voice cracked. I never wanted to be chosen. I wanted to be free. And yet, destiny had already claimed her body and soul. Smoke rose on the southern horizon. A pack of rogue wolves had attacked a neutral village loyal to Caleb. Word spread like wildfire. Kael's army was mobilizing. Not under Kael's command, but under his counsels. Malrik, seeing his alpha hesitate, had declared war in Kael's name. She is a threat to balance, he said. The longer we wait, the stronger her bond becomes. A coalition was forming behind Kael's back, eager to crush the prophecy before it bloomed. Kael returned to find half his pack already preparing for bloodshed. He slammed Malrik into a stone pillar, fangs bared. I never gave that order. Malrik met his gaze coolly. You lost the right to lead the moment you let her go. We're cleaning your mess, not ours. Kael nearly broke him then, but restraint carved deeper than rage. This wasn't about Elira anymore. It was about power, and fear of what she could represent. Meanwhile, Elira stood above the ruins of the southern village, the scent of ash and fur still clinging to her cloak. Bodies lay torn and broken beneath the red sky. This wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. They're coming for me, she said. Not for you. Caleb nodded. Then we give them something to fear. Around them, wolves began to kneel. Not to Caleb, to her. I never wanted a crown, she whispered. Then wear it for those who died without one, Caleb replied. That night, under the sickle moon, Elira stood before the stone circle. Caleb offered her his blade. She sliced her palm open, blood dripping onto the altar, igniting runes that had been cold for a century. The old magic accepted her. The land itself responded. She wasn't just the prophecy's pawn now. She was its voice. Under cover of night, Kael crossed into enemy land alone, cloaked in shadow and desperation. He left his guards behind, left the council behind. He came not as an alpha, but as a man, one who had failed her. The meeting place was sacred ground. the shifting lake, where blood could not be spilled. Kael was already there, arms crossed. Elira stood between them, her expression unreadable. The moon shimmered on her silver-marked skin like armor. "You shouldn't be here," Kael growled. "I had no choice," Kael answered. "She's not safe. None of us are." Elira looked between them, her voice like frost. "I was never safe. Not with either of you." The words cut deeper than any blade. She turned to Kael, eyes hollow. "Why did you reject me?" His mouth parted, but no words came. She waited. Then, "Because I loved you too much to survive it," he finally said. "Because I thought you deserved more than being tied to someone who'd be consumed by rage." Kael said nothing. His silence was its own kind of love. Steady, loyal, unquestioning. But Elira stepped away from them both. "This isn't about either of you anymore. It's about what's coming." The three of them stood in silence as a cold wind blew across the lake, carrying a scent they all recognized. Death. A new force was rising. One that didn't care about bonds, or brothers, or prophecies. Something darker. Suddenly the water shimmered with a memory. An ancient wolf with eyes of stone, watching from beneath the waves. Elira staggered back. A new memory? A warning? Her mark burned again, but this time it was different. It wasn't reacting to Kael or Kael. It was reacting to something older, something hungry. The Stone Council gathered in secret, lighting fires with bones instead of wood. The High Elder of the Eastern Ridge had returned, and with him, a secret long buried. The prophecy was incomplete, he whispered. There were not two chosen, but three. Elira, Kael, and something still sleeping beneath the mountains. A creature born not of the moon, but of the void between stars. And Elira's new mark. It was his. Kael felt it too. He watched her from a distance now, as she trained the bonded wolves who had come to her side. But each day, her magic shifted. Less light, more shadow. Her dreams became haunted, her words sharper. She was changing, and he feared the ancient force was claiming her. "Don't lose yourself," he said to her once. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence was already an answer. Kael, meanwhile, had discovered something even more dangerous. His own blood carried the same mark as the third bond. A distant ancestor had sworn loyalty to the Voidborn Lord, an oath never broken. That meant the darkness inside Elira also lived in him. We were never enemies, he realized. We were vessels. For what? That answer still waited in the shadows. This crown was never meant to rest on any head, the High Elder said. It was meant to break them. Elira sat alone that night, hands trembling. "I wanted to be loved," she whispered. "And now I carry the love of gods, monsters, and ghosts." Her body glowed faintly, torn between three powers: Kael's fury, Kalem's loyalty, and the unknown third. And in the mirror of water beside her, her reflection blinked. But her eyes did not. The skies darkened at noon. All across the realm, packs rose and turned on each other, not out of loyalty, but instinct. Elira stood at the center of the chaos, her voice the only anchor as the mark on her spine pulsed like a war drum. Kael and Kael stood at her sides, silent, each prepared to kill the other. But the moment had passed. This war was not about them anymore. It was about what had awakened inside her. "I never asked for this crown," she said, eyes burning. "But I will wear it until it kills me, or until I kill whatever comes for us." The battlefield cracked open. From beneath, shadows rose, shapeless things made of nightmare and memory. The Voidborn had awakened, drawn by the convergence of bonds. Elira stood between the armies, lifted her hands and sang. Not words, not commands, just a sound that made the world stop. Her power rippled across wolves, alphas, even the dead. And then, she chose. She broke Kael's bond first, not out of hate, but mercy. Then she turned to Kael and did the same. The light faded from her marks. The air stilled. "No one owns me," she whispered. "Not anymore." And the moment the last thread snapped, The third power screamed, realizing it could no longer feed through her. It attacked, but she was ready. The fight was blinding, half seen, half remembered. She burned with moonlight and void light, wielding both against the dark. When it was over, the battlefield was ash, and Elira stood alone, alive, changed. The battlefield still smoldered when the tremor came, not from beneath, but from within. Elira staggered as something inside her cracked open like an egg split from the inside. The third power, the void-born mark, had not died. It had merged. She wasn't just free. She was fused. The gods had not intended to crown her. They intended to create something new. A wolf without clan, without mate, without limit. Kael and Kael, barely alive, watched as her hair lifted in an unseen wind, silver light licking across her arms. The scent of her was no longer wolf, but starfire and salt. Her heartbeat sounded like thunder across the hills. The wolves who had once bowed to alphas now bowed to her, not by oath, but by instinct. She had become the first of a new kind. The question was, would she choose to rule, or disappear forever? "There's no name for what I am now," she whispered, the words thick with grief. "Then give yourself one," Kael said, kneeling. "You were never meant to follow." Kael tried to stand, blood dripping from his mouth. "You'll burn the world if you stay like this." His voice was not angry, but afraid. "You're becoming something they'll never accept." Elira looked at him, the bond long gone, but the memory of it still tender in her chest. "Maybe that's what they said about you," she replied. "And maybe you listened. I won't." In the distance, surviving packs began to gather again, waiting for judgment, guidance, or wrath. Kael reached for her hand, but she pulled away, gaze fixed on the horizon. "This ends with me," she murmured. "The cycle, the chains, all of it." And then, for the first time since the war began, the winds grew still. The council's ultimatum burned in her hands. They were gathering an alliance of every remaining alpha, every surviving bloodline. They did not see her as savior. They saw her as infection, a deviation, a mistake. "They fear you because they understand what you are," Kael said. "You're the end of their hierarchy." She held the letter tighter. "And I have to choose, destroy them or kneel." Neither felt right. Kael, resting near the edge of the camp, watched her silently. His body was healing, but his silence had changed. It wasn't the silence of regret anymore. It was acceptance. He had lost her, not to another man, but to herself, and he didn't resent it. "You became more than I ever let myself believe," he told her. "I don't know if I deserve to stand beside you, but I'll stand between you and them if you ask." She turned away, not with cruelty, but with the weight of everything she carried. "This isn't about you anymore, Kael," she said softly. "This is about what comes after me." She knew what the council wanted. Her head on a pike, her body erased from legend. They feared what she represented more than they feared any army. She had become evolution, and that was the real threat. Kael tried once more. "There's a third way, not surrender, not slaughter. Speak. Show them what you've become." Elira stared into the firelight, unsure. Her voice could level walls now. But could it heal? Could it unify those who had branded her enemy? Or would it only draw blood in more beautiful patterns? That night, she stood beneath the moon, alone, and spoke not to gods, not to wolves, but to the dead. "I am not your vessel," she whispered. "I am your ending, and your beginning." The wind carried her words to places she would never see. The stars flickered. The assembly took place at the Vale of Echoes, sacred ground where no alpha had set foot in centuries. Every surviving bloodline sent a representative. Spears crossed over ancient altars. Elira entered alone, dressed in obsidian and starlight, her steps silent, her presence undeniable. She did not kneel. She did not bare her throat. She stood tall and waited. The silence was worse than hatred. It was the fear of awe. The High Elder finally spoke. You carry 3 marks, girl. Blood, void, moon. No creature has ever held that much power without turning feral. Elira tilted her head, her eyes calm. And yet, I speak. Her voice echoed unnaturally. Not with magic. With truth. You fear I'll rewrite your order. But I don't want your throne. I want to burn the throne so no one sits alone again. Gasps echoed. Some wolves snarled, but others bowed. One alpha shouted, What gives you the right to dictate our ways? Elira stepped forward. Because your ways nearly killed me. And they will kill others. Your rules are chains pretending to be law. I carry them in my bones, and I reject them. A young wolf in the front row began to weep. Another bowed. Kael, standing far behind the crowd, felt something shift in him. Not grief, not pride, but peace. The war in him, finally silenced. Elira wasn't the girl he loved anymore. She was the change he couldn't become. And that was beautiful. Caleb, beside him, only smiled faintly. He never needed her to choose him. He only needed her to choose herself. Then, in the stillness, the unexpected happened. The High Elder lowered his staff, then let the old world end, and knelt. Elira returned from the Vale a different creature. The clans had yielded. The bloodshed was postponed. But inside her, something still pulsed. A final thread. The first mark. Not Kael, not Kaelum, not the void, but herself. The magic she'd inherited was ancient, yes, but it wasn't finished. She still belonged to something older than all of them, and now it demanded the last bond be broken, the one to destiny. That night, she entered the ritual lake alone. The surface was black glass. The air smelled of frost and iron. She slipped into the water, letting it swallow her to the chest. The magic curled around her limbs like a lover. I am not your prophecy, she whispered. I am not your daughter. I am not your blade. And then, with trembling hands, she reached behind her neck and ripped the final sigil free. Her scream split the night sky in two. Magic poured from her like stormlight. Runes tore from her skin like feathers turned to flame. Her body convulsed. But she didn't drown. She rose, unmarked, unchained, untouched by any bond. For the first time in her life, Elira existed purely as herself. No fate, no master, no love that needed permission to bloom. I do not need to be chosen to be worthy, she whispered. I choose myself. The stars above flickered, then flared. Not in warning, in acknowledgement. The spirits in the water receded. The lake calmed. She stepped out, naked and sovereign, and the world did not fall. It shifted. Time passed. Not months. Not years. Moments folded in on themselves. Elira disappeared from the packs. Her legend spread like wildfire. Some said she became a goddess. Others said she walked the world in silence, righting the wrongs of her ancestors. Caleb returned to his mountain, watching stars and protecting the borderlands. Kael dissolved his council, gave power back to the clans, and vanished into the forest beyond. The war never returned. In a meadow no map could find, a woman knelt by a fire, her hair silver, her eyes steady, her hands calloused from holding peace. Children approached her from villages on the edge. Are you the wolf with no name? They asked. She only smiled. I'm the one who was never supposed to survive, and now I teach others how to. She wrote no laws. She wore no crown. She left behind no bloodline. But every girl who was told she was too wild, every boy who feared softness, every alpha who thought power meant cruelty, they remembered her. And in the stories whispered beneath moonlight, she was never described by her bonds, only by her silence, her fire, her name. She stood at the cliff where it all began. The forest beneath her was green again. The moon was whole. Elira placed her palm on the stone altar, the same one where she had once been rejected. Only now, her hand left no blood, just warmth. You don't have to remember what they called me, she said softly. Just remember what I refused to become. She walked away from the past, not as a queen, not as a wolf, but as something beyond naming, and the world at last was quiet.